Hello, welcome to Fireside Chats. My name is Magla Pillai, and today we will be taking up the subject of yoga and meditation. For those of you who are new to this series focuses on things within that hitherto did not have a name attached to it. The problems we experience, the challenges that we experience internally that no one, not even yourself, necessarily understands. Today we will be looking at the subject of yoga and meditation and how it can be an answer to this internal conflict that we may have. And for this, we have in the studio with us today Sister Denise, who has been practicing Raj Yoga meditation for over 4 decades. Sister Denise, a very warm welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. The subject of yoga and meditation is not new. It's been around for, centuries, but it's become popular over the last few decades. What is different about the type of yoga and meditation that you practice, that you found beneficial, and that can be beneficial to the general public?
Well, most people think of yoga as physical exercises. Then there's also the breathing exercises of pranayama. But the yoga that I work with is called the ancient Raj Yoga. That is the yoga of the mind, the yoga of the intellect. It is actually the word yoga means a link. So it is a link between the soul in a state of self-awareness with the Supreme Soul, of using the power of the mind, which is focused by the capacity of the intellect. And when you're linked with the Supreme Being, with God in this way, then you're able to actually draw the light of God, the power of God, the qualities of God into yourself. And yoga also, being a link with another being, is a relationship. And so when you're in a relationship with God, the Supreme Being, then that influences every part of your life. So then it becomes a lifestyle as well as a spiritual practice, and it's also a spiritual education. There is a huge body of knowledge which is the basis of the yoga, and then the fruit of the yoga is the personal transformation that occurs slowly over time.
Sister Denise, what you just said sounds really lovely and powerful, and as a solution, comes across as a solution to one's problems. But the first thing that one encounters when you're sitting quietly, even trying to meditate, is the noise of the mind, the resistance that one experiences internally. How do you manage the resistance that one automatically experiences when you're trying to meditate?
I think you don't start halfway through or at the end. You have to start at the beginning. And so the beginning is really looking at some concepts, very, very simple concepts. So the first thing to do is to practice being conscious of the self as a soul, which means you have to say to yourself, I'm a soul, I'm not a body. And you can't say that to yourself unless you understand it. So then you have to go into, okay, what does that mean? What is a soul? And so this is why you begin with the actual information, the knowledge that a soul is a tiny point of non-material light with intelligence, you see. So that's already a very deep concept. And then you say to yourself, well, I am that. This body is an object. I am not an object. And you have to think about it for a while. So a soul, or to think of the self as a soul and practice being a soul. So, okay, I am connected with this body. I am not taking up space in this body because I, the soul, do not have any physical dimensions, you see. So you have to think, okay, the self is really, really small. The body is the instrument. that allows me to talk to you, that allows me to hear what you say. So the soul will speak through the mouth. The soul is the one who performs all the actions. So I see through the eyes, I look through the eyes. And when you're looking, if you just practice just looking through the eyes, okay, I can see a whole scene in front of me, but where do I pay attention? I can look this way, I can look that way, I can keep a whole scene in front of my eyes and look at one particular thing in that scene. That's the focus of attention. So this is really beginning to exercise the will, which is to focus the mind. So you're looking through the eyes, and the scene that you get when you see through your eyes, that is an imprint on the mind. And the mind will, appreciate the colors. The mind responds to whether it's harmonious, disharmonious. It will have reactions to what you see. So if you see something very pleasing, the mind will say, oh yeah, that's nice, we want that. Something that is very displeasing, the mind will say, no, I don't like that. So all of this attraction and repulsion is in the mind. And then the intellect is another part of the soul, which is very different from the mind. The intellect will say, well, it might look nice, but it's not good for you, so don't go there. So the intellect is much more the side which is evaluating the real usefulness or uselessness, value or lack of value of what is perceived through the eyes, through the ears, through the sense organs. So the impact of everything that we see in the material world goes onto the mind. Now the mind itself is like a sixth sense. So the mind is able to perceive non-material reality. And yoga involves orienting the mind away from the material world that it perceives through the sense organs, using concepts. So the concept of a non-material world can be absorbed in the intellect. And then the intellect says, okay, well, I understand that. And then the mind will say, but I can't conceive of it, I can't feel it. And so the mind and the intellect have to work together until the mind says, yes, okay, I can grasp this. And then the mind is able to be a vehicle for the soul to actually experience something in the non-material reality. You see, so this is where you start. Or you say, okay, I, the soul, am sitting this body in this chair. I control this body. I can pick up this cup and drink from it. I can say something or not say something. But you start to have to deal with the fact that every action is performed by the soul. And then what you want to become is soul conscious. Conscious of myself as a soul functioning through a body. So that means you're really practicing to go in. Because the soul is on the inner world. There is the inner world, then there's another world like the inner world, the world beyond. So the link between the soul and God is going deep within, on the inside of the material world, connecting with one who is on the outside of the material world. So the material world is like a donut. The inside is the inner world, and then the outside is the outer world. But the inner world and the outer world are effectively the same thing. So then you see the material world is something finite, and the non-material world is more infinite. So you start, playing with these ideas, and you begin to get insights. Okay, yeah, I think I'm a soul. I'm not an object, definitely. I'm a someone, not a something, You really start distinguishing between being a being, being an object. Anything material is an object. Am I a thing? This is the question. Am I a something or a someone? Souls are genderless. Your gender is a factor of your body, not a factor of your being. But of course, the soul is very influenced by the body. So this is the beginning part, just trying to distinguish between what is me and what is not me. The soul and the body, two things working together as a unit, but definitely two completely separate. One is an object, and one is that which gives life to the body, that's the soul.
Yes, Denise, does a human soul have needs? Not, you see, the body needs to be clothed and kept warm in winter and cool in summer, and it needs food, etc. What does a human soul need? Is the needs different from the body?
Well, the body is made of matter, so air, earth, fire, water, and ether. And of course, the way the body is designed, it works best within a quite narrow range of temperature, and it has to be fueled and so on and so forth. But a soul is made of purity, peace, power, love, and bliss. Very, very subtle qualities. And each quality has a certain feeling about it. And these qualities in combination are a kind of light, like a kind of electricity, which gives life, you see, and which can think, and which can feel, you see. But when this energy of the soul starts to get low, then that's when the soul has needs. It needs to be full. Rather like a battery. The battery will work fine until it gets really low, and then it starts, you get a message on your cell phone saying, low battery, fill me up, And I think most people are at that point, running on empty, I need a fill up. Where do I plug in? Where's the socket? Where's my charger? What is the thing? So the method of yoga is the charger, and you have to actually plug in and get charged.
Okay. Could you describe how God fits into this picture? From what I gather, he's meeting the needs of the soul. How does one relate to God, as according to how you define him or her?
Well, God is the power source. And so what you're going to plug into is the being of God himself, herself. The problem with the English language or any other language is the gender, they're determined by gender, because the people who speak are conscious of the body. We don't have a soul-conscious language. Otherwise, we'd have a pronoun for a soul. We don't, you see. So this is difficulty. But God is a being who contains the quantity of those qualities to an infinite degree. So if all the souls of the world would plug in simultaneously, there'd still be enough to fill everyone up to capacity. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of how enormous is the power of God. And I think if somebody would see it or apprehend it directly, they'd be scared to death because it's so big. And so I think that God keeps hidden so that it's not too scary. So partly people are afraid of God because of that power, but another reason why people are a little afraid of God is because they associate God with the consequences of karma. And so people say, well, God punishes and God rewards. And definitely God is the one who knows all these laws of spirituality, who knows who every person is, who knows their history, who knows their future. This is why we have the expression God knows, but God isn't telling. Well, God tells whatever we need to know. And the thing we need to know at this time is, I'm a soul depleted and I need to fill. And the only way that I can fill is by separating myself from the consciousness of the body. And this is why we have to really know, I'm the soul, this is my body. And by focusing on the self as a soul, then you come out of what we know as body consciousness, which means to be materialistic, material-minded, and try to become oriented towards the self as a soul, where then spiritual considerations outweigh material considerations. And then you can have a balance. The problem with the materialism is it denies the existence of the soul and God. So then you're going to be really depleted.
Okay. Yes, Denise, whatever you say sounds very beautiful and doable, and it answers the needs of the human spirit. But in for want of a better term, the real world, you have to earn money for your own livelihood. You have to interact with your family and friends. You socialize. You go to work. You go to the movies. You live here. And what you're saying sounds way up there, and then you've got your life here. In order to succeed at what you just said, does somebody have to, swing completely to the spiritual side? Do you still have a life, a normal life, or how do you marry the two? Because what you just described sounds like lifelong internal work.
Just take a simple act of, this is a cup, and I, the soul, very consciously bring this cup to my lips, drink, in soul consciousness, take the contents of the cup into the body. It's a completely different vibration from when I do that without being aware of being a soul, you see. So the point is to do actions in the consciousness of the soul. So I earn my living in the consciousness of the soul. What happens when you're in body consciousness is you are under the dominance of material values. When you do things in the consciousness of the soul, then spiritual values dominate. So your conscience and consciousness is determined by whether you're soul conscious or whether you're body conscious. So if you're body conscious, you will be under the sway of sense perception. That means if it feels good, it is good. Whereas soul conscious attitude will say, okay, it feels good, but let's look at other considerations before we decide whether it is good. You see? So in that sense, you are not just doing things on the basis of sense perception. Mm-hmm. You're looking at other considerations. What are the long-term consequences? How did such and such a situation arise? You would never do that in body consciousness. In soul consciousness, you think about what's known as the three aspects of time.
And what is that?
The past, the present, the future. So every circumstance, every situation exists as a consequence of something that brought it into being from the past, and so it's here in the present. So the soul conscious soul evaluates it in that context and also observes where it's going. Because the present moment, the soul can then act on it, you see. And if you see, okay, it's going in this direction, is that what I want? If you want it to go over here, then you have to do something to orient it in a different way, you see. So when you're soul conscious, you start exercising power over what's going to happen to you in the future. Mm-hmm. In body consciousness, you're in a momentum that is based on sense perception, which you're unaware of. And it'll go off in a direction that you have basically no control over.
Mm. Yes, Denise, many have tried to remember God and found that he's, because he's invisible, very elusive. It's very difficult to hold on to him, her, because he doesn't have one of these. How do you hold on to the awareness of God as you are going throughout your day? Because you can be with him in a second.
No, but you can't do any of this until you first make yourself soul conscious. The moment you're soul conscious, you're connected right away with God. So the whole effort has to be soul conscious. Mm-hmm. Because when you're body conscious, you are limited to the material world. When you're soul conscious, you see the material world for what it is, and you are able to be detached from it, and you have instant access to God. So the whole thing is make yourself soul conscious.
Which is the fact that you're a soul in a physical
First
body.
You have to understand it.
Okay.
Then you have to bring yourself into that state, you see. But it begins with applying that information in your intellect and rolling it around until you get the implications. And some people never get it. Mm. Okay. Mm. But it is capable of being understood, you see.
Okay, last question. Can you do any of what you just said alone? Do you need to do it in a group? Do you need to belong to some organization to do it? Can you embark on your own spiritual journey?
Well, I mean, there's homeschool and there's school with classmates. And I think that where you have like-minded people and you can discuss and compare and, you know, see how one another's doing is actually educationally a better context in which to develop. So it's nice to do this in the context of like-minded others, you know. But of course, a lot of this is private, personal, inner work. So it's a combination of you having your conversations with God in which you may say, you know, oh God, I'm unable to be soul conscious. I think I know what you're talking about, but I can't connect with you. But even by doing that, there's a relationship going on. And you're in a position where you're able to actually struggle or strive. And you know, if you persist, you can actually pull yourself out of this, you know, this power of matter over the soul, you see, because it is a very strong power. You know, people are afraid of death. And in the same way, people are afraid to separate themselves from the body because it looks like the same thing. And so very often when a person is struggling and striving and really trying to understand this, God will give that person the gift of the experience. Mm. And it can be a visionary, it can be more of a sensation, but you know, it's quite frequent to feel that, yeah, you're sincerely trying to, you know, figure out what soul consciousness is and become soul conscious, and all of a sudden it happens to you. And then you say, oh, yes, this is what it is. And then you have the feeling, which is then in your memory. And you can then go there because you know what it is, you see. So I think the initial part is sometimes the more difficult one. If you have a teacher who is themselves really soul conscious and are being soul conscious while telling you to become soul conscious, that combination is a full communication which can actually help you to come into soul consciousness yourself. And then you say, yeah, I got it. Okay, I know what that is. And then the teacher will say, okay, now you go and practice it, you see. Because by practicing it, you make it firm.
Okay. Mr. Denise, do you have to embark on any external change or adjustments in your behavior and your relationships to practice what you just said?
In a way, yes. Because
what type of changes?
Well,
will the changes put people off of practicing because they think, gee, I have to do this, this, and this?
No, there are implications. You see, when you're soul conscious, you're really in your purity, peace, power, love, bliss. In body consciousness, you're in very different emotions. You're in your passions, you're in your anger, you're in your greed, you're in your fear. All these emotions are the dominant ones. And so that your lifestyle as a body conscious person correspond to those dominant emotions. Once you start practicing soul conscious, you're operating in a different frequency. It's a different atmosphere, different vibration, and so obviously that's going to change your lifestyle because you will want to be true to yourself. You become very sensitive. You find that, okay, well, if I am love, then I can't be loving and violent at the same time. So you're going to have to drop some of the aspects of violence that you might have been very comfortable with in body consciousness. All of a sudden you feel differently. And so then you will act differently.
Okay. Thank you, Sister Denise. Unfortunately, we've got to bring today's talk to an end. It's been very rich and given many tons of food for thought, so thank you. So those of you who are at home who have been wondering about meditation, spirituality, yoga, goes by many names. If this subject has been of interest to you and you never knew before how to practice it or tried practicing it and have failed, I do hope that the words of Sister Denise, which carry 40 years of experience behind it, has been of some benefit to you. And from what I gathered, what Sister Denise was sharing is that all you have to do is practice it and see if it works for you, and be patient in your journey as well. I don't remember Sister Denise saying this is easy, but what she did say was that it's doable, and if it's important to you and if you think it can help you irrespective of your personal situation, it's something that you should definitely try because it sounds very empowering and liberating at the same time. So thank you for joining us, and I hope that you found the content of today's talk of some value to you. Thank you and goodbye.